In this video, I will be installing MySQL Server version 5.7 on the 64-bit version of Windows 10. MySQL is a database server. One of them you can download and use for development, and database servers are used for storing data. I'll be using the automated installer, which makes the process of installing, creating databases, and setting up users easier. First step is in a web browser, go to dev.mysql.com, click Downloads, scroll down until you see MySQL Community Edition, click on Community Downloads. Select the MySQL Community Server link, and by default it's Microsoft Windows since I'm running Windows as an operating system. And this is the automated installer. Click on Download. Now you have two different versions of the installer. One is a smaller file size, and it contains an installer that will only download the components for MySQL if you need them. The second option includes everything, and it doesn't have a need to, you can kind of think of it as an offline installer. It has everything, but you may not install everything. So I'll choose the smaller installer and click on Download. Click on the No Thanks, Just Start My Download link. I'll open the file. It's asking me for administrative control to make changes to my PC. Click Yes. Click Yes one more time. Accept the license terms. Click Next. And you have different setup types. There's a developer default that will include the server, workbench, these utilities and program connectors, as well as documentation, which all that is like a PDF document. Or you can select the server itself. I'll do a custom install that I'll only install the server and the workbench. The workbench makes interacting with the database easier if you're trying to create databases and setting up users and so forth. Now, at a later time, if you want to install the documentation or install database connectors, you can launch the installer again and go back at a later point in time and add those things or remove things you've installed. So with the custom option checked, click Next. Expand MySQL servers until you get to an option. You see two of them. The first one is the 64-bit edition. The second one with x86 is the 32-bit one. Since I'm running the 64-bit version of Windows 10, I'll select the 64-bit edition of MySQL Server and click on the right arrow to add it to the features to be installed. Expand applications, workbench, and choose the correct bit version that you want to install, whether it be the 64-bit or the 32-bit. And once you've decided, click on the right arrow to add it to the products or features to be installed. Click Next. It's confirming that I want to download and install these two products. Click Execute. After it's downloaded and installed the products, click Next to begin configuring them. And click Next one more time. You have configuration types of development, server, and dedicated. I'll just be using this for local development. I'll choose development machine and leave everything else at their defaults. Click Next. It's asking for a root password, which is the master account. Type in a password and confirm that password. And for the user accounts, I'll set those up in the workbench. So I'll leave that blank for now. Click Next. I'll configure MySQL Server as a Windows service and automatically start up that service when Windows starts up, and it'll run as the standard system account. Click Next. Leave the plugins and extensions on that option unchecked. We're not going to be using it as a document store, which is something called NoSQL. And finally, click Next to do all this configuration, which if you're trying to do it manually by hand, takes a little bit of time and is tedious. And finally, click on Finish. Next. Click Finish to exit the installer, install, and start up MySQL Workbench. And here we are. Let's go ahead and connect to our database. It's asking for the root password. Type that in. Now, if you get a message like this, that means you've typed in the root password wrong. And if you can't get in, I'll go through how to recover from this error now. Now, if you don't get this error message and you can get in right away, you can go ahead and click on the time marker up in the upper right hand corner of the screen and skip to that section since you are not encountering this problem. The first thing that we'll need to do is stop the MySQL server that is currently running. Under where it says ask me anything, type in service. Click on services. Click on a name, press the letter M to go down to the names that begin with the letter M. Locate where it says MySQL, which is currently running. Right click on it, choose stop. Where it says ask me anything again, type command. And now we're at the command prompt. Type in notepad space reset.sql. And we'll type in our new password in here. Can't find the file. Yes, we want to create a new one. And type the following command. Alter user and in single quotes, root, end single quote, at, and then in here, type in localhost space identified by, and then you would type in your new password here. And you can put in whatever your password it needs to be, and that with a single quote, file save, then file and exit. And inside this directory, we now have a file with the root password that we want to set it to. Click on the Windows icon. Scroll down to the letter M and locate the MySQL folder. Click on it and it'll expand into more options. And where it says MySQL command line client, right click on it, more, open file location. And I'll select the one that says MySQL command line client, right click, choose properties. I'll copy the text in the target field, and you need to make sure that all of it's highlighted. Choose copy. I'll need to open a second command prompt under ask me anything. Type command, but this time instead of left clicking on it, right click on it, choose run as administrator. And it's going to ask me, do I want to make changes to the device, and click on yes. So in this window, this console window, it should have administrator command prompt. If it doesn't have administrator, this won't work. I'll need to change to the directory where I created the reset.sql file, which for me is under C users user. So I'll do cd to change the directory, c:users user, and there's my reset file. And I'll paste the contents from the shortcut into the command line window, and I'll need to change some things around. Where it says mysql.exe, you're going to add the letter D as in David after the letter L in MySQL. And where it says U root, I'll back up to where the apostrophe is at and delete the rest of the line. In its place, I'll type in --init-file equals, and I'll need to give it the absolute path of the SQL instructions that I want to run to reset the password, which is in the reset.sql file. So I'll type in c users user, and this is going to change based on what you see here on this line /reset.sql, and I want to make sure that the command runs fine. So after that, I'll put a space and then -- console. Press enter. Now you should see that it's executed the file reset.sql started and ended. So that means it ran fine. And right now the MySQL server is running. Now, if you scroll up and if you see anything that says errors, that means that there's a problem. And the only one I can really think of that you may see is that it can't write to a file named IB data. And if it can't write to it, that means either the MySQL, there's another MySQL database server that's currently running that you'll need to stop in the services, or there isn't the word administrator next to command prompt, so it doesn't have administrative privileges to modify the database. So in this scenario, everything ran fine, and now we can stop the SQL server. And to do that, press Control-C. You may need to press it a couple times. Now, if that does not work, you can always, under Ask Me, well, actually, no, you can do it in here. Well, under Ask Me Anything, type in task, and it already auto-completed. Click on the task manager, and you'll need to locate a background process that has the word MySQL in it. And what you'll do is you'll right click on it. For example, I'll just use Chrome for an example. Right click on it and you would choose End Task in the MySQL Server task. Now that the server is stopped, we can start it as a service again by going to Services. Click on a name. Press the letter M to go to the M's. Right click on MySQL and choose Start. And it should show a status of running. So in the MySQL connections now, we should be able to click on local instance and type in the root password and get in. So now that we're in the MySQL Workbench, it provides a nice graphical interface that allows us to create databases and users and tables just by clicking on stuff. To create a new database, click on this cylindrical icon. It says create a new schema. We'll go ahead and click on that. Give it the name of the database that you want to work with. I'll be original and call it work. You can call it whatever you want. Under collation, under the last video, I chose UTF-8 underscore general underscore CI, which is like a default internationalization setting. And to create the database, click apply. And that's the SQL that it generated to create the database. Click apply. And it's done. Now over in the schemas, you'll see the work database has been created. Let's go ahead and create a user that only has access to the database. Click on users and privileges. Click on add account. Type in the login name that you want to use. I'll use the word Joe since that's my name. Limit host matching. The % means that anyone that tries to log in with the name Joe can connect to it from outside of the network as well as my local machine. I want to limit it to just my local development machine. So I'll delete the % and type in localhost. And then I'll give my account a password. And I'll confirm that password. In the lower right-hand corner, click apply. Now to give Joe access to the work database that I just created, click on the Schema Privileges tab. Choose Add Entry. Click on Selected Schema. Click on the down arrow and choose the database that you want to give this person access. Click OK, and you have all these different rights, like if they want to be able to read the database, write to it, delete rows, update rows. And I'll essentially treat this as kind of a super user account. Click on Select All, and it selects everything except for the grant option. So it can't grant permissions to any person. Only the root account will be able to do that. Click on Apply. And now Joe has access to the work database and doesn't have access to any other databases in the system. So if you want to try connecting as Joe, I'll click on the X icon and create a new MySQL connection. And this is just to my local machine. And I'll change the username to Joe and set this schema to work. And I have to give it a name. Call it Joe's connection. And I'll click OK. Double click on it. Type in my password. And I'm in, and I only have access to the work database and I can't see the SYS one. So that's it for this video. And of course, thanks for watching.